This is a Rogue Media Network podcast.
Welcome, everybody, to Teach Me Pokemon, the podcast. I'm your host, Cory, and along with my co-host, Jared, we're best friends, been playing Pokemon for a very long time.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we're back with another episode of the Teach Me Pokemon podcast. I am Cory, one half of the dynamic duo. The other guy is Jared. He's here on the podcast. Jared, before we get started, you want to play our favorite game?
I love games. Yes, what is the game?
I'm holding the deck right here.
Oh, I love this game.
That should have won NAIC. It didn't. Had some bad luck, I'll call it. This is Greninja Frostlass. It's a favorite segment of ours called Guess That Card. What card is it right here?
Very specific card.
It has to be the card.
This is a Frogadier.
Frogadier. I needed a Buddy Poffin. Sorry, everybody. For everyone that doesn't know us and hasn't been around us for 17 years, we used to play this game all the time when we were living together playing Pokemon. So
my other favorite game currently that I'm playing a lot with my daughter, who is getting more and more into Pokemon, is when we open a pack. You know how the first card underneath the QR code is always an energy. They've added an extra card in the packs now. I love to play Guess That Energy.
Oh, geez, man. That is like clutch. I wish that if like all the stores like Targets or even game shops were in on it and you could guess the card, they give you another pack or something.
I saw a guy at the Knoxville Regional who was running some, I think, kind of side, open up a pack, make a bet. I was with it, but it was kind of shady.
Well, shady. If we get knocked out of the Louisville regionals quickly, that's probably what it'll turn into. We'll have a card table and we'll just be doing bets.
Absolutely. Teach Me Pokemon will be doing some undisclosed, uncommunicated things that the tournament organizers may not be super happy about. But it'll be fine because we're destined for day 2.
Destined to day 2, so we're not even going to be doing that. So, but anyway, you doing good, Jared? You all right?
I'm good. I've got a baby Pokemon running around, or not running around. He just kind of eats, sleeps, and poops.
Yeah, that's true. So, crawling, not even crawling.
Not even crawling. He's leveling up slowly, but we're gonna get him there.
Good. Proud of you. Proud of you.
We're excited. We're very excited. We're prepping Louisville here already, but on today's episode, we're actually going to be talking about some things building up to Louisville. Our first segment is going to be kind of talking about the gap before the Stellar Crown release, looking at some online tournaments, talking about some of those things. Later in the show, we're going to be talking 30,000 feet about Stellar Crown. We're not going to get into individual cards on today's episodes. That'll be next week, but we want to talk about what this set means, what it will change, all of those type of dynamics, again, from a 30,000-foot view. And then, of course, we always have our education moment at the end of the show. But we cannot move forward without talking about Stray Collections, our sponsor.
We can't, man. Stray, they've been with us, well, I'd say from the beginning, but they've been with us for a while now. YouTube channel, card shop, online card shop, looking for singles, they got you. You want packs, they got you. You just want fun videos where we get to open up stuff. I've been on a few episodes, collector versus competitor. That was the name of the segment, which I thought was really fun. And it's cool, man. I just, you and I, we're not on the collector side of this enough. But Stray, that's what he deals in. And so if you're looking for that PSA 10, Caterpie from Jungle set, or I don't even remember what they were. Maybe he has them. So, but he also can help you find some newer stuff too. So shout out to Stray Collections with a Z, YouTube channel, obviously his website, straycollections.com. And Jared, he'll probably be outfitting us with some cards for Louisville. So
I love it.
We'll be repping.
We could use it. We'll be discussing, maybe not super specifically, but Cory and I's mindset as we kind of approach the second U.S. regionals. We'll be avid watchers of Baltimore coming up here in just a couple weekends and super pumped about that. But first, we have to jump into our first segment here today, which is live. We got to know, Cory, again, our first and the first regional of the seasons is not here yet. So all that people can really do, especially without the new set moving forward, is talk about what's going on in the virtual space. So there's
Sure.
been some tournaments coming out. I know you've looked at some results. I just kind of want to talk to you through that. What are you seeing? Was what happened at Nationals a fluke, or in some of these larger 100+ tournaments that we're seeing online, are things staying pretty much the same?
Yeah, I mean, my first comment is based on this graphic you have. It's really cool, by the way. But what happened to the Lugia player? I mean, they only got one Archeops down, and
No.
so was there what went wrong is what I want to know. But anyway, no, it's still a lot of Reggie Drago. I don't think much has changed since what was the most played deck at Worlds, and so that's just a ton of what's on live. Lugia is still very, very prominent, obviously, in the mix as well as a deck that people can throw together and pilot pretty efficiently. Still probably more Gardevoir than what we saw at Worlds, just because people I think are comfortable on it and they know they can run it into a lot of different matchups. But not seeing a lot of our Worlds winning deck.
True.
Iron Thorns just isn't. I mean, you'll see it splattered around, but this isn't like 6 of the top 8 decks are Iron Thorns. Like that's not happening right now. But I still think Jared, it's still Drago, man. That deck is still, even though Stellar Crown has not come out yet, it's not playable online. So the Reggie Drago deck is still what I'm seeing, at least on live and tournaments, is still what's the most prominent and what's doing really well. And then you have your Charizards, obviously, are always still strong.
Absolutely.
I haven't seen as much. I would have thought Miraidon with Jesse it would be more popular. I'm not seeing it as much as I thought I would.
Yeah, it's interesting. As I've looked through the results too, I agree with you. It does seem like we're still living in the age of Reggie Drago. It reminds me similarly to when Charizard first came out with Obsidian Flames. Like this is the hotness right now. We're gonna run with it. I'm seeing a lot of Raging Bolt still.
Yeah.
I'm seeing some of that in the mix as well. But what's encouraging to me is that I look through the results. There's one, maybe two Reggie Dragos in the top 8. It's not like this overwhelming force. It does seem like there's a consensus that this is the best deck in the format, but that doesn't mean it's winning every single tournament. That to me is the sign, even in this gap, of a healthy meta.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think we felt that, right? I mean, we felt like going into it, there was a lot of different variety, still a lot of decks that could perform well. There's not the true counter deck to Reggie Drago, so it's not that the Drago and then this counters it. So we're seeing a lot of this. I mean, there's decks that play better into it, but there's not that clear triangle, if you will,
Yes.
where this beats this beats this beats this. But it definitely is still pretty wide open. I mean, if you see a Lost Box take a tournament down, I don't think anybody is surprised, because it still can hang tough. I know there are cards that counter it pretty hard now, but I don't think anybody would be shocked if a Lost Box took down one of the late night invitational tournaments with 200+ players in it.
No, I totally agree, and I saw some Lost Boxes in top 8. That Kyurem is a really difficult card to maneuver around because anybody that runs Kyurem knows that they're going to have to run a Canceling Cologne too if they really want to utilize the effectiveness of it. So it's a hard balance for Lost Boxes, but that's, again, I'm going to attribute it. It's like Mew. It's not going away.
Mm-hmm.
It's that good. It's that strong when you have this support Pokemon that's drawing you cards at the beginning of every turn. And then the mechanics of speeding up energies, it's just strong. And it feels like Pokemon developers the same way back when Mew was strong. It's like, oh, let's throw something in there because we feel like this is going to be overpowered right now. But I'm not seeing anything spicy. Maybe I'm not looking at the same tournaments that you're looking at, but it does feel like what happened at Worlds is slowly playing out, diversifying a little bit, but pretty much the same.
Yeah, no, not a lot of spice, which is kind of it's a little sad. But I think we're going to talk about Stellar Crown. I don't know where we're heading with it, but I might bring up something that I think one card alone is the ability for the top to come off the spice bottle, Jared, and just spice sprinkled, a lot of spice sprinkled all over your food. So and I think it's just one card that's going to do it. So, but we'll get there later. I won't talk to it now.
Yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there later.
yeah, current online standings, it's just pretty standard stuff right now.
I agree. Let's do this, and then I do want to move into talking about Stellar Crown with you. I've had one big revelation in the decks that I'm playing on live right now. I'll go first, and then if you have a big revelation from what you've been playing, and then we'll hop into Stellar Crown. My biggest realization is it feels like Pheasantipity has nullified Iono in such a big way. And in my read of Worlds was, hey, this is going to be very passive. I think Pheasantipity was a big reason why decks got quicker, and while good players were hesitant to play decks that featured reset stamps, decks that were like Gardevoir, because it doesn't matter anymore when you're going to draw 3 cards plus your 1 at a minimum for turn. I'm not scared of any late game deck anymore. And it feels like people are hesitant to pull out the Pheasantipity on the same turn as the Iono because you can't. You'd have to have counter catcher, you'd have to have pokey catcher. So I kind of like that, but that's what I'm noticing more and more in my games is like I'm not scared of running into an Iono if I have a Pheasantipity on my bench.
Yeah, Pheasantipity is the staple card right now. I mean, everybody has one. You have to play around it. I've noticed most games it gets dropped, or if my opponent drops it, I'm gunning for it. Like that's like the first thing I boss order kill. If I'm running, I was curious, like Jesse Parker's. I never was a Miraidon player, so I just never played it. But I thought, well, I'll give it a try, and it's something kind of simple put together, and it is like anytime my opponent drops that, I'm gunning for it. Whenever I drop it, they gun for it. Like it is just becomes that you got to get this card out of the way because it is just like a magnet for if they don't and I draw 3 cards, Jared, I always get boss order and win the game. Like it's like I always get a card I need off those 3 end game, So you got to get rid of that card if it's in play. I just, my opinion, I get your whole, you can't boss and Iono in the same turn. That would be like the best of all the worlds. But I think if it gets dropped too early because your opponent feels like they can't find it again later, I gun for it. And I think you should because it's that strong of a card.
I agree too. I'm just trying to remember a support card that offers so much value. Its health is above 200 in really sticky situations. Like it can even become a pretty versatile attacker in the right decks, especially with all the energy switching cards that we're seeing right now. It is the highlight card. I agree. And it is, but it feels like also with Stretcher being such a prominent card, it's like, oh, Stretcher, Pheasantipity back on the bench after you knocked it out. Run it back. You want to pull it out again? Come on, come and grab it again. So that's my big realization is this card is the stuff. I think you'll see it everywhere moving into Baltimore. And it feels like it has nullified a certain type of deck that was so prominent right before Worlds. So Cory, what's been your big takeaway then? Like as you've been playing different decks on live, like what has been the big transition that you've seen from the last set leading up to Stellar Crown?
Yeah, I think this isn't as bad as it was from NAIC to Worlds, where I think people like weren't sure what to do, and it was pretty vanilla as far as the sets are concerned. But I think we're kind of back to that. We're like, you go to Worlds, they're running a bunch of Worlds decks, obviously the Drago and like you said, Raging Bolt and a little bit of Miraidon. I think people are testing Dusknoir now out more. Where like before Worlds, people thought, oh, Dusknoir. And now people are like getting way more comfortable with tweaking and playing around with a Dusknoir deck where it's, designed to Iono you, or I played against this Palkia, Greninja, and they're sniping and dropping 130s everywhere. And so I think a lot of Dusknoir fun is happening, but I don't think it's anything that translates to what we're going to see in Baltimore. But I think people are just like not sure what they're doing right now and just waiting for Stellar Crown to come out, which will then set the pace for the regionals coming up here in North America and around the world. So yeah, I think it's still just a lot of just, well, what was run at Worlds? I'm going to copy their deck on Limitless and just play it. But then now I think people are like, oh, Dusknoir's fun and let's try this. And And so that would be my 2 assessments of what's going on live right now.
I think that's really good thought. It is going to be super interesting. It's just funny that we've had one set come out before Worlds, and it was Worlds, and Worlds ends, and now another new set before the next new tournament. That feels just very weird. But let's
I don't like it. I don't like that. I think we got to figure that out. Pokemon, that's too long of a gap.
It's weird.
It's weird. Yeah, we got to figure it out.
Well, let's talk some Stellar Crown now. An exciting new set, really an emphasis on a new type of Pokemon, and that's where I kind of want to talk about it. Is like where do we really feel? Again, from 30,000 feet, we're going to talk some very specific cards next week. Cory and I are going to have some picks for what we think. But like, in your opinion, what is the big concepts, big changes coming out of this set?
I mean, I think the only big concept, and if you don't have this, then we're going to have a debate. But it's just the ability to stretch the bench out to 8 spots. I mean, I mean, everything else, there's some fun stuff in here for sure. But to bring that element back to the game is huge. Like, I mean, in old expanded tournaments, long time ago, like Zoroark was just such a card that hit based on your bench, and then they would run Skyfield, and it was just like Zoroarks everywhere.
Right.
Where it was like technically designed for Rayquaza, like that was the whole point of Skyfield. But you could incorporate it in different decks that relied on more damage based on your bench. I know your opponent gets it too, but you could always like use it to get rid of bench Pokemon as well, because you could stack to 8 and then get rid of Skyfield and then discard 3 that were damaged or something like that. So I just think the ability to go back to expanding the bench to 8, provided the Terra Pokemon is in play, which I know that's a caveat to the card.
Sure.
But I mean, there's a lot of Terra right now, so I don't think that's going to be very difficult to meet the qualifications to run that card. So I mean, I know you said specific cards, but I'm just saying general concept is I think our minds are going to be now open to more bench spots. And I think controlling the bench and navigating your bench is going to be much more important now than it was before. And my last point, and you can go back, is like, you know, not to always go back to old stuff, but like you could play Shaman and drop to 6 and then discard and then play another Shaman and drop, and then Lele for a supporter. And then you could discard your Skyfield and then you could get rid of those liabilities. And so now with Pheasantipides and Squawks and Lumineon just being more prevalent, you can just get rid of these cards now. And so that is going to affect, I think, opponents or players building decks feeling totally fine with liability cards because you can get rid of them if that stadium gets out of play.
I think those are such great points. It was funny to me at Worlds how many of the casters were talking about like their favorite sets, and Roaring Skies was just so prominent to them because that's what they love. They want to play the game. And when you have 8 bench spots and all these fantastic support Pokemon right now, that is the game that high-level players want to play. It opens up the game more. You're drawing more cards. You're getting to make more decisions. I completely agree with you. Yeah. Here's the weird thing for me, and I've went back and looked at this a little bit. So Scarlet and Violet comes out, right? Base set comes out. The big thing then was, Miraidon, Koraidon. And then the next set, Paldea Evolved, that's when we got Terra Pokemon.
Okay.
Right? And that's a big thing in the video game that as I've been playing the video game a little more, that's very, very prevalent in the video game, these Terra Pokemon. But they didn't really do anything.
Mm-mm.
They just had like this little ability, kind of like some of the, I forget, the trait Pokemons way back when that we had. Yep. But they never accessorized cards for them the same way that they did with like future Pokemon, ancient Pokemon. All these supporter and trainer cards were coming out and it was cool. But now that there's some more powerful Terra Pokemon cards, that's what's so interesting to me in the set. We're finally starting to see things come out that are helpful to Terra Pokemon. It seems delayed.
It is a little, maybe they just saw the power struggle and then they thought, well, let's help, and I think maybe Pokemon didn't know, but I think they knew like, hey, we're bringing out, like, we've seen good Terra Pokemon. Obviously, like, Charizard is Terra. It's massive, right? But it's like the fact that you just can't hit him when he's on the bench is like not really a factor. It could be, but it's not really a factor. But now that it's like, I feel like the colorless Pokemon that I don't even know the name of, that I should know the name of.
Oh,
but it's like
the Terra Pagos.
Yeah, like it's like, oh, now the king of Terra has now come into play, and everything's going to shift now to this colorless deck. And so, I think Pokemon knew there were some Terra, and then we're not going to do anything with it. So let's do Ancient Future Box, and now let's go back to the Terra side of the coin and see where they go with it. So yeah, I mean, I feel like it was intentional. I don't think they just thought, well, man, Terra doesn't do much, so now let's help it now. I think that was always part of the playbook.
I agree. I think there's some strategy behind it, but it was just weird seeing these new types of Pokemon, and then they just had like one weird offbeat trait, almost like a Pokebody back in the day, right? And now, like, you're seeing some of these cards, like you said, the Stadium that you mentioned, even the Tool card. That's coming out. There's so much to talk about. I'm excited to get into more detail with it next week. But
it was like the Regirock, right? That was the only one that I ever ran any tournament, was the Xerneas Regirock with the
just load up those energies, baby.
Yeah, the Electrode.
Yes.
You just threw him on the Regirock because its trait said you couldn't boss it. Like, you could not yank that thing off the bench. And there wasn't really anything in that set or in that game play back then that sniped. And the thing had like 130 health or something. So it just sat there. You could throw all your energies on it, and the Xerneas just did 20 times the amount of energies in play. And it was like, you could do nothing. And it was such a cool trait, and there were no answers for it. And so I don't think Pokemon's going all the way back to that kind of thing. But now I do. I mean, being able to not get hit off the bench is a nice little added factor.
I agree.
That is in play, because Greninjas can't like 90-90 you know. So there is some play to it. But now that there's cards added that will help Terra, I think that's just going to be really cool.
A big picture, when you think about the Pokemon in this set, apart from what we're seeing in the Terra world, is this going to be a set where we get to see new fun attacking Pokemon come out? Is this more of a supportive set in your mind? Or as you've kind of looked through the scans, big picture, what should we be expecting from the Pokemon in this set?
This set is the appetizer, Jared.
Oh.
This is, you got to the restaurant, you ordered your Stellar Crown appetizer, whatever that is, spinach dip, onion rings, I don't know, whatever your jam is. Jared has an appetizer leading up to the entree that's coming, because this is a good set, but this isn't the ground shaking one. But I think this will lay out the foundation for what the next one is going to be, in my opinion. I do think there are some good cards. It's a big set, but I don't think this is like the one that everyone's going to remember from this era of decks or Pokemon or sets and stuff like that. That's my take.
No, I think that's fair. Looking through, I see some like interesting concepts. Mm-hmm. I see some, and we've joked about some of these things off air. It feels, to me, it feels like this set is going to have some kind of hidden gem pairing with another set that, just because it's not active right now, we just haven't seen. And and because this is how I think about Pokemon. I think you think the same way. There's always the headliner. There's always the headliner that's coming out, right? That everyone's so excited about. Everybody's talking about. It's gonna be there. It's the number one draft pick. It's not going anywhere. And that feels like what all of this Terra stuff is. But then there's always this little something else that maybe people aren't picking up on that gets partnered with something. That's what gets me excited. It feels a little more rogue, a little more spicy, a little more off the beaten path. Yeah. And reading some of these, there's some other sensibilities that we haven't seen in a little while that were present in past sets that aren't in the current standard meta that I'm excited are coming back.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong, and I think as it always is at the tail end of a rotation. Like, not that we're like necessarily really close to one, but it'll happen. But now every set that comes out, you just get more sets to play with. So this one, even though it may not have like 7 meta decks coming out of it or whatever, but because there's just now more cards to play with, there should be more fun combinations that people will figure out to toy with and put that in and now this is viable that we just don't see yet. And so, yeah, I'm with you, man. I do think there's going to be some things we don't know for sure.
I'm very pumped about it. If you haven't seen some of the scans, there's scans up, some on Pokelector. Justin Basil has a lot of them. Go check those out. Go start getting prepared. There's also some proxies that you can print, take a look at. I'm not a big proxy printer play ahead person, but there are so many different pre-releases that have already happened and a few more happening. And then the release of the set coming up very, very quickly, synced up with Baltimore. Yeah. So cool stuff happening. We're really, really excited to cover that and look at that. We will have one more episode next week before the tournament where we will be talking about what we think we're going to see, what the big cards are. Well, now, Cory, we're going to move into our education moment, and our education moment today is called 50 or 60.
Oh,
and what we're going to be talking about a little bit today is this concept. I know that people build decks in a lot of different ways, but some of us like to have like a 60 card list, or what I'm going to call a 50 card list, and then they like to tweak it. And some people like to build decks from 0 cards up to their full 60. So that's what I mean. So when I say 50 or 60, 50 is I like someone to put out a list. I'm going to probably use 50 of those cards and do my own little 10 tweaks and add-ons, but I like to have something to work with.
Okay.
60 is, nope, I want a clean slate. I'm going to put the deck together from scratch. And talk about you talk about it, I'll talk about it, and kind of the sensibilities behind being a 50 or a 60 player.
This is incredible. This is a great educational moment. I think wow, there's a lot of good points to both. I think if you're a new up and coming player and you're not sure what you're doing yet, I think building it from the bottom up is what you should do. And I know that might be counterintuitive, because just pick someone's deck and just play. But I think it teaches you the structure of what goes into this and why. And then when you get frustrated that you're like, well, I have 20 energy in my deck. Why am I not drawing into supporter cards? Well, that's because you have too many energy. And so I think it does teach you how to, like, the theory behind why you do what you do in creating a deck and building a deck. So I think that's what you do when you 60. So pick 60. I think when you get to a point when you're just like, you're trying to figure out your method and what decks you want to play for maybe a specific tournament, you don't have to recreate the wheel, right? I mean, there are very good players. There are teams out there that are building and running decks, and they do these things for a reason. And unless you're like just full-time invested in this, I think it's okay to copy 50 of the 60 cards and then do your tweaks and go from there, because there is a rhyme or reason behind why they do those things. And so I think it's okay if the mindset is like you're trying to be competitive or do this or that. Like, again, if you don't have all the time in the world, that's why there's pages like Limitless and Jared. That's why they let you copy the decks off of the website. So, like, take advantage of that. But I think if you're new, don't cop out. I think try to build your own decks and see what happens.
Yeah, I think a caveat to that is if you're just new to Pokemon but not new to TCGs, I think it's easier to be a 50 person than a 60 person, because you have a lot of the sensibilities. You just want to play what's good and get better at that. If Pokemon is the first TCG that you've ever picked out, I'm 100% with you. You need to build a deck from scratch. And that's what a lot of leagues will do. Like, what I'm seeing a lot now in our league is we're going to start you with a 40 card deck just to get some basic things down, and then we'll build you up to 60. But I totally agree with you. If you're a brand new player, the thrill of building from nothing is a lot of fun, and using your resources. Mm-hmm. I have a little bit different take on this, and this is even a little bit different from what you're saying.
Yeah.
I'm one or the other based on whether it is a meta deck or whether it is some kind of rogue concept.
Okay.
Or if we're at League and we're playing like a weird off night. If I'm trying to build like an A, B, S tier deck, yes, I'm a 50. I'm looking at the best decks, the best Pokemon, the best players, and then I'm adjusting it. If you listen to our tech or deck education moment
Oh
episode
yeah,
ago,
that was a goodie.
that's same concept, right? But we're talking about the rest of the cards versus just those ones that you're tweaking in or out. But you're right. I don't think 99% of the time the best players know what the best is there. Don't fight it. Learn from it. Make your adjustments based on your read on the tournament and go for it. But if I'm rolling into a tournament with something rogue, I don't want to hear anybody else's rogue stuff. Right?
No.
I'm building it from the ground up. I'm testing it from the ground up. And that's the way that I want it to be. Or if we have like a weird league night, no, I'm not looking around to see what other people are running on. Hey, you can only, our league night says you can't have more than 10 energy in your deck. Okay, well, that will switch some things up.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do some different things. I'm gonna tweak it up. But for me, it's based on what I'm going for. When I try to put my own meta deck together and then compare it to what the best decks are, I realize how inadequate of a deck builder I am sometimes. Because I'm like, oh yeah, why didn't I think about that? That's way better.
Yeah.
That's 10 times better than why did I have 4 researches in here? This deck shouldn't run research at all.
Yeah. Well, you think you're like, hey, I need to draw a card. So what's the best draw card? Versus like, oh, well, this actually synergizes a lot better than what this is. Or how many coin flipping cards do I want to add in here? If I want to be like Jared and add 9 of them, then let's go. But if I'm not, like what's the method? As long as you can, I think, explain why you did it and you had some sort of justification behind it, I think you're fine, but at the end of the day, it may not be the most optimal build, but at least it functioned and it worked. But I just think it allows you to best understand your deck. But if it's rogue, yeah, man, part of the fun of rogue is that you build it yourself, because there's you're probably not going to find that deck anywhere online where you can even copy 50 of the 60 cards. So you probably have to build it yourself anyway. So I think, yeah, you should have that approach if you're building like a rogue deck, definitely.
Absolutely. I'm way on board with what you're saying right now. The other thing that I think plays into this, and we've talked about ego in past education moments, is I think you have to kind of put some ego aside if you're going to be a 50 mindset versus a 60 mindset, right? Because I've been this way, and you've run into people at tournaments, Cory, that are like, I've concocted this thing, and it's my and for those people, it's way more important that it's their personality and their mind in that 60 cards versus it being the most optimized, efficient, best deck.
Oh yeah. Oh, there are some of those players, like full-time players, that just live for that, right? I mean, are you running a Zool 60? It's like, I don't know. Like, it's my deck I put together. It's a Zool 60. Like, I mean, he was the first person to ever put these 60 cards together. Like, and so they just like love giving it the name. Like, oh, it's Cal Connor's Snorlax. It's like, is this Cal Connor's Snorlax? Like, okay, fine. And so you have to put the ego aside, because there will be a piece. If you win with so-and-so's deck, you're going to be like, oh, well, Jared won using so-and-so's deck. And it's like, but Jared won, you won the tournament, Jared. But it's like a piece of them gets to win the tournament with you. And you have to just be okay with that.
Sure.
Because that's just how it is.
If I paint a mustache on Mona Lisa, like, we could get into the dynamics of all that, but I do think it's really interesting. And I want to get rid of stigmas here more than anything. Is there's not a right answer here, right? But be aware that there are different options. That's what Cory and I try to do, is use resources. Look at all these decks that people are making. Like, a lot of the decks that I'm running on live right now are straight 60s of some of the best players, or they're 50 up. I think I maybe have one deck on Pokemon Live right now that I built from nothing. And I don't run that deck very often because it's not very good.
What is it? What's the deck? Do you know?
I think it was Cough Egregious. I think I still have my old Cough Egregious deck on there.
Cough Egregious, baby. Yeah, bring it. No, and for that kind of deck, Jared, you would have to build on your own, because no one else has that. Nobody else has.
It got ruined by Iron Thorns. The whole deck got ruined by Iron Thorns. I can't run that. I was going to win, but I can't run it out because of Iron Thorns.
Thanks, Fernando. You ruined it. No, yeah, I think it is the ultimate accomplishment when you can put a deck together that's winning, plus you built it from the ground up. Like, that is really cool. But like, in this day and age, we have resources, use them. I mean, it's okay. Like get an idea of what, ask Chat GPT. Maybe Chat knows what you should build, I don't know, So anyway, I think, but it's a good argument there. That is definitely a real thing. But I think if you're new and you're playing, I think spend the time to build, lay out the cards, do the stacks of 4, and you got your Pokemon, your trainers, your energy. Like, there's just nothing beats that at the kitchen table, and you sit there trying to think, do I take out this one card for this card, all that stuff. It just makes you a better player.
I agree. And that you brought up a word that I think is very important because it wasn't always there, and older players will remember this. The amount of resources that are available to players right now versus when we started, which was 2007, is unbelievable. What is available now in 2024, 17 years later. There was a few sites back then. There was Red Shark. If anybody remembers what Red Shark is, you're an OG.
Yeah, you OG. If you played on Red Shark, man, that thing was brutal.
But to find somebody's list back in the day was like, I didn't know this information was out there. So take advantage of it. Again, not a right or a wrong. There's a lot of preference that plays into it, but there are so many more resources, and I think there will continue to be more resources. Just like Teach Me Pokemon, Cory. I think it's a great resource for the players out there.
Love it, man. Yeah, I mean, this is a good spot. Jared and I don't know everything, but we'll definitely talk it out, and maybe we spark some creative juices, in your brain, and you're like, oh, actually, let's try it differently, and let's do it that way. And so, that's what we're here, and we love theory crafting. We love talking the game, and especially heading into like a new season where we don't know. We don't know what's ahead. We will not be sharing our 60 for Louisville probably, but maybe you could get it out of us. I don't know. So, but anyway, we probably won't know until we hit the target 2 hours before we get there and are hunting for a certain card or something like that. So,
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we're going to wrap up today's episode. Again, big things coming. First regional of the year in Baltimore coming, not this weekend when you're probably listening to this episode, but next weekend. A lot of more stellar coverage coming and stellar crown coverage coming next week. So be able to tune into that. Like and subscribe, man. We're cruising on the subscriptions right now. Put us on a reminder. We're heading in the right direction, and we just enjoy making content for you all. Hit us up in the comments. Shoot us an email. We have email.
We like that. Hit us up with an email.
Hit us up with an email.
There you go.
But catch us next week. Cory, any final thoughts?
You know what? I'm excited. I'm excited for regionals. I think we get back into maybe some picks next week. I don't know. Maybe we dive in, see what happens. But I'm pumped. I'm pumped for a new season. I'm pumped to see what happens. New leaderboards and new formats and all that stuff will be cool.
I love it. I love it. Thanks everybody for listening. And as we always say, we'll catch you later.
You can find us at roguemedianetwork.com. Teach Me Pokemon Podcast. Come and dive with us.
This has been a Rogue Media Network production.